and then it'll be recorded and we can just share it from there. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
You get a message, the meeting is being live streamed.
On YouTube.
Yeah, that's good.
Awesome.
Okay, cool. Well, here we are. Well, what we're talking about is the experience of learning about the School of Metaphysics and choosing to come to the School of Metaphysics. How in the heck does that work? What is the School of Metaphysics? We'll talk about that later, but we're going to jump right into a story, though. So, Kai Lee, or I'm sorry, how do you say your name?
Ely.
Kaili. Kaili will tell us her story about how she found the school, and then I'll squeeze my story in there. So here we go.
Awesome. Thank you, Terence. So for my story, I grew up in a household where there was Buddhism and Christianity, and my dad was non-active, but my mom was more active. And so as I grew up, I definitely leaned into the Christianity piece and really appreciated, the spirituality of it. And as I got older, I, became extremely involved. And so eventually after college, when it felt like my world was falling apart because I originally had a trajectory that I was going in where I was going to get married and all of these things to someone I was previously with. And he was going to become a Lutheran pastor. I didn't know what to do at the time. And at this point, I had dabbled in different types of Christianity. I was trying to understand why there was, different denominations and what was going on. So after I graduated with a degree actually in business, in international business and entrepreneurship, I decided to go on a year-long missionary trip. So I went full the other way. And I ended up going to a bunch of different third world countries. And in that time period when I was doing that, I did like the logistics side. I actually found myself gravitating a lot towards going to different mosques and temples and just having conversations with people of different faith and just understanding like what are they doing? What is going on? Does this stand up to what I believe? And kind of at that point, seeing for me at least, the religion and the spirituality piece was a little bit different. And so I was a little bit confused. So actually in that time period, I became more questioning of everything that I believed in. But I was happy that I could, bring it and have it try to stand up to what I thought was, the truth. And my world shattered again. And it was kind of like there was a lot of things that I was keeping from that time period, but also things that I was like, there's got to be something for myself that is different or more that I'm trying to understand. And I'm a very open-minded person. So that's why I really enjoyed going to these different mosques and temples and things like that. And I was like, you know what? What they're saying too, a lot of it makes sense as well, and like we're kind of talking about similar things. Obviously, there's differences, and we understand that too. And then trying to pull away the religion piece of it. So then fast forward again. And at this point, I am not caring too much about, bettering myself in the health sense, which is ironic that that's kind of how it got me into the School of Metaphysics. But I was starting to get sick. So at the time when this was happening, I was like, with my now amazing fiance, and we were running businesses together and living our best lives. We quit our 9 to 5, doing our thing, flipping homes, having fun. And I, at the time, was training for an Ironman. So at this point, I had run quite a few marathons, and I wanted to test myself at a higher level, like different limits. And at that point, when it felt like everything was coming together, that's when my world started falling apart. That's what it felt like, at least. Not knowing that this was going to really just jumpstart me into what I really wanted to do. And so I started getting really sick, and I didn't understand why. It started from a silly surfing injury, and I couldn't heal from it. And when I was training, I just was getting worse and worse, and no one knew why. And it was like on and off for about a year and a half. And during that time period of being undiagnosed and not having any clue what was happening, I was kind of like, okay, so what is the difference between people who heal themselves and people who don't? And at that point, my understanding was, well, their mindset is different. And there's something about what they understand allows them to kind of like pull through these experiences that seem kind of insurmountable. And the so I actually got involved because it was during COVID times. And for business, we decided to do some online networking. And I actually met Sherwin on one of those events. And we talked about business like the first two times, I think. And then like the third time, we weren't supposed to like see each other again, but we did. And so we started talking more about what we did outside. And he just so happened to be the director of the School of Metaphysics. And I initially got involved because he was teaching a class on attention. And I was like, I need to focus and I don't know what's going on. I feel so all over the place. And so I actually started with a 4-week course with him. And normally there's like, you have a lot of students, like you have like people that you're with. And it just so happened that in that class, it was just me and Sherwin. And it was like, Sherwin was like, I feel like this manifests in a way because we were able to have, these conversations that were a lot, deeper. It was still part of the attention, of course, but I got to also just have like just this one-on-one time to kind of figure out what was going on. And Brandon, my fiance, is actually very metaphysical. And when I first met him, I was more closed-minded. So I was like, I know what's true and I know the way, and you don't know what's going on. But I would say like 2 weeks in, like energetically, like I knew I was supposed to be with him. And I was like, how can I be with a man who who isn't on the same page as me, spiritually? But I was very open to it. And fast forward to when I was sick, I was kind of like, you know what? There might be something here. Like maybe I'm the closed-minded one in this situation, and it's okay. So we decided to then take the class that was online offered at the time, the cycle 1 class, and we did it together, but we were separate students. So, like we weren't on screen together. We had to do our own exercises, our own, showing up to class and stuff like that. And the weekend that I got, so it actually, when I was in the class, I almost died actually, when that was happening. And it was kind of like to the point where I was so stubborn about what was happening. I didn't want to admit that I was that sick, that it was like I was at risk for like a heart attack, for stroke, for organ failure and everything. And they couldn't figure out why still at this point that like these things were happening with my lifestyle. And I finally decided to ask for help, which is something I never did. And within a couple of days, like my mom, came up, she drove me to LA to see a doctor there. And then on the flip side, I flew to Chicago to get a past life profile done. I wanted to, we were at cycle 9. So that was the time to do that. And at the same weekend, what was said to me in the physical and then what was said to me in, doing metaphysics, it completely lined up. So I was diagnosed at the time with chronic Lyme disease with a ton of co-infections, apparently. So that was wild. But on the flip side, my past life profile relates back to me being a healer in the past and have done many healing lifetimes of, for myself. So it kind of like lined up for me to understand why this was happening. And then at the same time, Brandon got his back and he was a gladiator in the past. And his was willpower. And so us together, we're like, I understand why we're kind of like doing this. And so that's kind of how, it's a little past how I got to the School of Metaphysics, but that's kind of how it all came together. It was, it kind of got hit upside the head, honestly. And I realized, you know what, like maybe, and I was very righteous, I will say, and that's something I'm working on, is like, you need to calm down. Like, just because you're right, it means other people are wrong. And who's to say that's the case? And that's a very close-minded approach to life. And I would say the School of Metaphysics was extremely warm and welcoming and opening, never told me I was wrong by any stretch of the imagination, but allowed me to work through what I had to, gave me a space to speak. And then by doing the exercises every day, that's what taught me the actual things that I believe in now, because I had to like go through it myself and, prove it to myself. So yeah. And then here we are, fast forward, like I'm feeling a lot better. And, we're like working through things that were technically incurable, or you're going to be sick forever and this and that. And yeah, I attribute a lot to my learnings and my understandings, and it's greater. And I would say I'm still a Christian, but in a different sense than the more traditional way I thought about it. And that's like way deeper, my understandings. So yeah, so long story long. That's my story.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you. So, one thing that we do with the School of Metaphysics, actually, the ideal is to be willing to be a whole functioning self, a whole functioning human being, whole functioning person, without any kind of need to be dependent, not to be dependent on any person, place, or thing for peace, contentment, and security. And so that's like the focal point of the School of Metaphysics. And so we're a school, obviously. And so we're just, going through some stories about how we found this place. This is a physical, there's physical buildings. The way we come together here, we're doing what we call the Peace Covenant reading. The Universal Peace Covenant is a document that was created by students and teachers in the school. And we read it together every morning now. We've been doing that for 1,318 days in a row. This is the 1,318th day, and we're super excited about that. And we've been engaging with each other, talking about peace and learning more about ourselves. And Mary Lee and Ted aren't students currently, but Ted is, I think he's, don't let me put words in your mouth, but I think he's super excited about peace. And so he comes to the Peace Covenant reading a lot. But we do it every day on Zoom. So it's kind of, it's pretty incredible. So, and Mary Lee is going to be a student soon. And so she got us started on this by asking all of us, how did we find the School of Metaphysics? What's your story? So that's what we're going over now. So, Ted, maybe you want to tell us about how you found the Universal Peace Covenant reading here on Zoom. Feel like telling us that?
I guess my story is relatively short. I'm, let's say, I have known Sherwin Rosenfeld for, maybe 10 years or so. He's my technical assistant. He makes my computers work so I can put them to work. And he suggested that I should come to a reading of these, and let's see, 3 or 4 times a week it fits into my schedule. So, and it's an interesting bunch to at least listen to in many cases.
Yeah, we normally have some really good conversations. It's good to have you here. Thank you. So
I run a bunch of networking groups that let's say encourage conversation, and one of my fun lines is, we don't have to shoot as long as we can continue to talk to each other.
yes, sir. Peace is built through communication. Kind and peaceful communication creates peace. So, yeah, awesome. Okay, so my story, I am Terrence Lamont, and I found the School of Metaphysics in 2008, and that was a time when people would put up flyers a lot for stuff. And that was mostly how you discovered new things in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I was at a coffee shop in Tulsa, Oklahoma called Chocs, CHOCS, Coffee House on Cherry Street, one of my favorite places in the world. I lived there in Tulsa for several years. I think I was there for about 10 years. No, 7, 8, about 8 years before I found the school. And so at that coffee shop, saw this flyer about dreams. People were like, it was this huge, enormous flyer. It had the Vitruvian Man on it and in the background, and it was talking about interpreting dreams for 56 hours straight. And call us anytime. We'll have a dream expert ready for you. And it was over a weekend. This was actually Tuesday. And so it was last weekend, right? Past. And I was like, oh man, this flyer is incredible. I was like, what is going on? And like, it was attractive to me. It drew my attention. I didn't know what the Vitruvian Man was at that time or anything, but I was like, what is this? I was really, Da Vinci got me, right? And so I was like really interested in it. And so I was like, man, but it's Tuesday, so this thing is over, you know. but I thought, if somebody makes a flyer that's this large and this, involved, they're not a one weekend type of, organization. They'll answer the phone if I call. So I went ahead and called, and this man named Jonathan Durbeck, who became my first teacher, answered the phone, told me all about the school, interpreted two dreams for me, and told me what they mean and helped me out a lot. And I had issues with sense of value at that time. I didn't understand my own value. And so I thought the school was wonderful from the way he described it, but I was like, that's not for me. I can't do that. That's for somebody else. There's people who are better than me. I'll get in the way if I go there. That's what I was thinking, because I was just that kind of, you know, self-defeater. But what I did do is gave him my information, told him it was okay to call me about other stuff, and I actually saved the number in my phone. So this is like, the soul was peeking out. My soul was doing little things like that to keep me involved. And so over the months of that year, Jonathan maybe he still is, but I know he was one of the most persistent people on the planet, because because every time they had an event or a class or anything, he was calling me, texting me, or sending me an email, and telling me about it, and so, I mean, almost, at least once a month, maybe 2 times, 3 times a month, I was hearing from him. Hey, we got this thing going on. Hey, this is happening. Hey, I think you should come to this. And that whole time I was like, still with the value issues, no, I can't come to that, blah, 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 lying, I'm not, whatever. I got this going on that day. I can't come to that. But that dude kept after me. He would not stop reaching out to me. And like, sort of the last time I kind of told him I was going to come to something, but I knew I wasn't, but I said yes. And so I kind of felt bad, and I didn't go. But then in the back of my mind, there was something else going on, right? I was working with an organization called Primerica. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that. Primerica. It's an insurance company. It used to be called A.L. Williams. The owner, Mr. Williams, was very much like Jonathan when he was younger. I think he's still alive. He's probably around 90 now. But he created this company just like Jonathan did, by being super persistent and connected and reaching out to people and building relationships. He was a perfect example of Think and Grow Rich. He is Think and Grow Rich personified, if you know about that book. And so he built this incredible business, this insurance business. And so it's open. It's a multi-level marketing company, which I'm sure a lot of y'all are familiar with. And so I start this multi-level marketing company. I get my license to sell insurance, and I'm, doing it, man. This is my business, man. I'm doing this, right? And I was about 28 when I started doing that. And I thought that was going to be something I was going to do for the rest of my life. I knew it was really helpful for me. It like helped me open up my mind and communicate better and learn more about myself. And it was great, right? And so fast forward like a year or so, I'm into the company, and I'm in a training. And this was back when Borders existed. The bookstore, coffee shop Borders. And it was right across the street from our training facility. And so I'm in this training, and we do this every morning. We did it 9 to noon every morning. I didn't watch football games, whatever. I was there every Saturday morning, not every morning, sorry, every Saturday morning, 9 to 12. I was there, right? And so rolls around about 10:30. We're sitting here, we're watching The Secret, so we were pretty metaphysical, right? So we're watching The Secret, just came out 2008. It was pretty brand new. People were loving it. It was really exciting. I'd seen it about 3 or 4 times already. And I was just like engaged. But as I'm sitting here watching that, I hear in my mind, get up. And it was like, it was so loud and like obvious. I looked around to see if somebody was talking to me, like if there was a human saying something to me, get up. And everybody was watching the movie. There was nobody talking or anything. And I was like, what is going on? And then I heard it again, and it was louder. It was like more persistent. It was like, get up. And I was like, okay. I think it said leave, get up and leave. And I was like, okay. And so I grabbed my stuff and like just walked out. And I've been persistent and consistent with this. It was crazy that anybody would leave. You're building your business. This is important. We're doing training, but I could not leave. I had to leave, and so I left. And I was like, what the hell am I doing out here? Why am I standing outside? I didn't have a car. And I was just like, what am I going to do now? And I look over across the street, like, well, hell, there's Borders. That's my bookstore, my library. I'd go over there and read books all the time and not buy them. And so I was like, okay, so it's my library. So I go to the library, and I get over there, and front of the glass door says School of Metaphysics, free lecture, the law of attraction and other secrets of visualization. Dr. Laurel Clark, author and president of the School of Metaphysics. And I was like, what the hell is going on? I was like, this is not happening. It's like, whoa. And so I go in, and the lecture was like in about, an hour or 2 hours or something. It was like an hour and a half or something, but they were already there getting ready. And so I looked over and I saw them, and I was like, oh, that must be them. They're in the coffee shop, right? And I was like, okay. So I didn't go talk to them or anything. I just went upstairs and went to my library, right? And so I go in there and start reading. But whatever I was reading, I couldn't put any attention on it for the whole time, because I was thinking about what the hell am I doing here? It was just so different. Like every other time I would go there, I could get engaged in a book, and I would sit there and I would read it and I would get it, it'd be deep understanding or whatever I get from that book, right? But in this case, I couldn't read. It wasn't working. My mind was way somewhere else, right? It was downstairs. And so the lecture time shows up, and I go downstairs, and they're down there, and I sit down, and I'm looking around, and they come up, and they want to, they're going to greet people. So they, there was like 4 teachers there, including Dr. Laurel. So those 3 other teachers come up and greet me and stuff. And of course, Jonathan is there, right? I've never seen him before. But I was like, oh, you're Jonathan. He was like, yeah. He was like, man, I thought you were older, man. Your voice is so deep. I really thought you'd be an older, bigger guy, you get this big, strong voice. And I was just like, okay, man, thank you. And and met the other people, and sat down, experienced the lecture. Dr. Laurel's a great speaker. And she has an aura about her at that time anyway. I didn't understand auras, didn't know what that was, but here this lady is sitting here shining like a light bulb, and I'm like, what is going on? Again, right? There's all these things that are like pushing me and driving me to come to interact with this organization. And I bought the book, and she signed it. And, I was like, I just left, they already had my information, but I gave it to them again, and left, right? Went home, jumped on the bus, started reading that book, and read the book for about a week or so, finished it really quickly. And like one day, really, I was finished with it, but I kept, going over it and reading it a little bit. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, this book is too valuable for me to just keep. Still got the value issues. So I gave it away to somebody. I just randomly gave it to somebody, a book that was signed for me. I just gave it away. And it's, because I just thought somebody else should have it, or I didn't think I was good enough. I don't know. Anyway, gave the book away. And then, so now I'm kind of released from the school for a little while. Jonathan still called me every once in a while for stuff. A couple of months more go by, and I'm working on finding people, the way to get your business going is to just go out and talk to people. We called it face to face, right? For Primerica. So I'm still in Primerica, and I go out one day and I get dressed up, and I'm like, dressed to the nines, and I go into this restaurant. This is not a short story. I go into this restaurant called Payway Asian Diner. I don't know if y'all know about that. It's like super good food. It's like PF Chang's, but it's like fast food for PF Chang's. Like, they got the woks and they let you watch how they cook it and everything. It's really, really cool place. So I walk in there. I'm like, I'm going to find somebody in here who wants to, who wants to be in Primerica with me. And so I go in there. It was like stepping through a portal. As soon as I walk in, I was like, again, I have this like weird kind of feeling, right? Like, what am I doing here? This is a special place. Something weird's happening right now, And, and I go up to the counter and I was like, can I have an application? I went in there to get people to work with me, but I'm asking for an application. And so I get the application, I sit down and I start filling it out. I don't know anything about this place. I start filling out the application, and the assistant manager is having lunch with the general manager. They look up and they see me, and I'm like, they kind of glance at me, and I hear, the general manager's like talking to the assistant, something, whatever she said. Dude gets up, walks over to me before I even had time to finish filling out this application, tells me to come on Monday at 10 o'clock. And I was like, what? And he was, he was like, hey, just come back on Monday at 10 o'clock. He's like, she's the general manager. She just told me to tell you that. I was like, okay. And I was like, you want me to fill this out? He was like, well, just bring that back. And I was like, okay. And so I just left and came back on Monday at 10 o'clock. General manager is there. Oh man, I can't remember her name now. That's pitiful. I gotta think for a second. Anyway, whatever her name was, we became fast friends. She was totally awesome person. We loved each other. It was just great working relationship. Everything, she picked my brain. She was a psychologist. She got a degree in psychology, and her minor was sociology. My major was sociology in college, and now I'm in metaphysics. And so we're just talking about all this mind stuff and all this different stuff. And we just, it was great, right? I loved working there. And it's like a traditional restaurant. And I was like a busser and a server. Like I was like doubled. It was like, I do all kinds of stuff, right? So I was always running around, but it's pretty traditional restaurant type stuff. So at a certain time, things get slow, right? And so if you work a double, though, like I like to work doubles. So I would need to go somewhere. I don't have a car. I live kind of far away. So I need to go somewhere and come back to work, right? At my appointed time. I work the first shift, come back second shift. So for an hour, maybe 45 minutes, maybe sometimes an hour and a half, I don't have anything to do. And so some days I would go to Starbucks and I would just go over there and just sit there sometimes. Sometimes I wouldn't even buy coffee. I would just sit down. And they had these super comfortable chairs. And so I would sit down and kind of almost fall asleep. And I'd be like, I can't fall asleep. Like a couple of times I did fall asleep, right? And I came back to work late or something. But then I was like, I said, okay, I love sitting in these chairs. I love this atmosphere, but I can't go to sleep. So I would just sit there. And my mom used to do something that she would call resting her eyes. She wouldn't go to sleep, but we wake her up and she said, "Oh, I'm just resting my eyes." So I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna rest my eyes," and so I would do that. I would do what she was claiming that she was doing. Maybe she was a nurse, so maybe she did it, sometimes. But by the time she had me and she was laying in her bed, she was not resting her eyes. She was snoring. She was asleep. But so. But I would practice this, resting my eyes, right? So I would just sit there with my eyes closed and I wouldn't let myself go to sleep. So what is that called? Meditation, right? So I'm sitting here meditating and I don't know it, but that's what I'm doing several days. I come, have my breaks and I go over there and meditate for a little while. And then I would go back to work and I feel refreshed and, I have a good day. And so I did that for a couple of months. And so that conditioned my mind to be receptive, right? So these dudes already invaded my mind, right? Whoever that was, they had invaded my mind once already, right? And so now I'm like super receptive now. So, so I'm working at this restaurant though, having the time of my life, having past life memories with people, just things that I didn't understand, but I knew special things were happening with the people who worked there. And it was just a really interesting experience, right? And so, I mean, this time I'm Christian, I'm getting out of being Christian. I'm not like, I don't go to church like every day, but I mean, I go, my whole family is. And so that was kind of my thought process. So I don't know anything about meditation or past lives or whatever, but I'm having these deep connected experiences with people. And I'm like, what is going on? It's like, why am I so attracted to the, this is such a good relationship and that type of thing would run through my mind. I try to understand. And maybe I'd read some books or something because I would kind of read them, Think and Grow Rich is right beside the metaphysical section. So I maybe would creep over into some other books and stuff sometimes when I go to Borders or some other coffee shops or, other places where there are books. But I don't have any deep memory about that. But anyway, so I'm standing outside at this particular day when I have a double and I walk outside again and I don't want to go to sit down at the coffee shop. I want to do something else. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, what else can I do? And while I'm doing that, my mind is open, right? And so I hear these guide things, whatever the heck they are. I have no idea what to call them, angels, whatever the hell they were. They said specifically, go to the School of Metaphysics. And at this time, I had gotten a car. I had a special experience where I got some money, and so I was able to get a car. And so that's another part of the story. Wow, I forgot about that. I ain't going to tell that. Anyway, I got some money and I got a car. And so now I have a car and I hear this the same way that I did when I was, training for Primerica, super loud, go to the School of Metaphysics. I was like, what? I was like, no, and the voice was like, oh, it was like, okay, you don't want to do it. That's fine. But you're not going anywhere. So I physically couldn't move. Like it was almost like I was sitting in darkness. And I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, I sat there for however long. And then I acquiesced. I just kind of said yes in my mind. And then it was like, okay, now you can move. And it's like, oh, okay. So now I'm out of the cage. This is this is a crazy story. I'm glad it's recorded because if I, this is it. This is the story. And so I go and get in my car and I call them and I, get Jonathan on the phone and say, hey, man, I'm coming over. And he's like, okay. Obviously he recognizes me because of my voice. Right. And so I get in the car, drive 20 minutes over there to the School of Metaphysics to this tiny shack-like place that just does not look like it was on Cherokee Street. I think the address is 502 Cherokee and South Cherokee. And it's just place does not look good. I even went to the neighbor to like kind of pretend like the neighbor was the right place, because even though I knew what the address was, I can read numbers, I can see it, but I was like thinking, just dear God, let it not be that place. That's how bad this place looked. And so I just finally went over there, knock on the door. Jonathan answers the door, of course, and there's another dude in there named Brian. And so both of these guys are sitting there and they're talking to me and telling me all about the school some more. And I'm asking questions and they're paying so much attention to me because they're concentrated. I've never had that experience before. People paying attention to me like that before. And it was really weird, but I allowed it. And after that, I think it was a week later, I did actually go to a lecture. And then a week later, I finally went to an event, right? And then a week later, I started in the class. And that was in 2008. That was June 4th, 2008 on a Wednesday. And it was at 7:30. So it was 7:30 to 10:30. So I did think that was kind of weird too and late, but that was okay. I stayed up late, but I still thought it was strange that people would do a class like that, that late, But I let all those strange, weird, out of the world type things happen. And I didn't judge them too much. I still, allowed myself to do certain things, even though these were some wild. I mean, I'm not saying this like, off the cuff. These were some wild, crazy ass experiences, for
Oh,
me.
to the School of Metaphysics.
And so, I stuck with it, and eventually I moved into that shacky place and started teaching. And I was like, it was pretty quickly. Within less than a year, I started teaching, and yeah, I helped them find a new building. So, because I didn't want to live there anymore, so we found a new building, and it was a much nicer place to live. And here I am now. Yeah, that was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now I'm in Maplewood, and still student, teacher, director, national peace ambassador. I just helped to lead and create the 50th anniversary that we had just recently in October. And yeah, so that's my story. I don't know how long that was, but I feel like that was a very long story. So you asked for it, Mary Lee. You got it.
Very much appreciated.
Yeah. I don't remember the last time I've told that, so that was good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Because
no,
normally
I've heard pieces of that story, but I've never
Right.
heard it told all together at once. So that was refreshing.
And I still left out one small piece.
I do have a question for you though, since we're live on YouTube. Can you explain the faculty in residence? Because
Yes.
some might not understand why you live there, why you moved
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Michigan.
So these people, yeah, thank you. So Brian and Jonathan lived at the school because it's a place, we're a not-for-profit organization. And we created, when we started in 1973, we incorporated. It was a place where there wanted to be comfort. You wanted to be able to relax, because what we're talking about is some pretty deep stuff, right? And so the thought was to have the school building be in a house, or what used to be a house, even if you want to call it that, right? Because they're not houses now. Now they're school buildings, right? And so these places that used to be houses, we turn them into schools. And so you make the front room, you wouldn't have a TV sitting there like you would have a TV sitting there when, you're going to watch reruns of All in the Family or something. You'd set it up differently, right? You set it up to be like a community center, where you have maybe some big table or, a good sized TV still. Maybe if you want to show movies and things like that, but we're not sitting here watching TV. We're using this whole building as an educational building. Even the kitchen is an educational space, right? But it is a house. And then you want it to be a place where people feel comfortable. So it's much more comforting when it's a place where you are able to relax and kind of have a lived in feeling, right? So we have something that we call staff in residence, or faculty in residence, or scholar in residence, which means that those people, I'm one of those people now, will live there at the school to take care of it. It's kind of like being a modern day Buddhist, right? It's like we take care of the place, we're present, we answer the phone, we interpret dreams for people when they call. If somebody just shows up and says they want to come to the School of Metaphysics, they want to know what this school is all about, there's somebody there sometimes to receive them. There's coffee and there's tea, and the air conditioner or the heater is already turned on. It's a comfortable place where somebody can just come in, and they come to class, and we host people, we guide people. And you need to be a teacher in order to live in the school, so that you understand enough to be able to do all the things that I'm saying, right?
Right.
So you go to the school for a certain amount of time, and then you learn, like lesson 9 is an important lesson. Like Kai was talking about, we receive a past life profile that helps us to understand ourselves deeper and our purpose in life. And by lesson 16, I was actually ready to teach. So I went ahead and moved into the school and started teaching. I had my past life profile. I got that, and I've gotten some other initiation points, kind of down, and I knew some things. I was qualified, to be a staff in residence. my teacher was there too, so I wasn't the only one living there, but we both lived there. And then we had his teacher that we call an area director who would come around sometime a lot, and she would stay there too. And so we had some, it was a good unit of people prepared to receive new people. So that's what we call that residence. Thanks for asking that question. That was a good question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So,
How
Mary
many
Lee, what do you
schools
think?
are across? Thank you so much. There's so much. How many schools of metaphysics are across the United States?
The one in Tulsa that I went to, we just recently had to let that one go. And so we have 11 now. And in 1973, I have no idea how many we had. There was 1980s and all that. There was lots of schools all around. But right now we have 11.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for asking. So that's a little bit about the School of Metaphysics. And so thanks for asking that question. That was a really awesome question. And I'm going to see if I can take us off of here. I guess I could edit this if I need to, since I'm saying this stuff is no longer the the crispy clean that we were before, right? But I guess we're just going to stay on here. I guess we just imagine we're not on here. I don't know what to do. I can't get off. But so anyway, anybody else got something else they want to share, say, or questions or anything?
No, thank you so much, Mary Lee, for asking. That was so sweet of you.
Yeah, I don't know how to stop it.
Maybe we'll all just have to leave.
I think that's the only way, but we don't have to leave unless we want to. Do y'all want to leave?
I need to.
This time.
We did spend a lot of time with a lot of stuff, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
All good stuff.
Yep.
Everyone have a wonderful day.
You too, Mary Lee.
Thanks.
And
All right.
also, I was gonna tell her that I liked her thinking face. I didn't
I couldn't tell I was like, what is she doing? I was like, what's going on? I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want, if she didn't want to be on, I wanted to make sure I'm not making somebody do something they don't want to do. All right. Well, I'll check this video out and maybe I'll have to edit it.
My computer isn't even plugged in. Look at that.
God.
It just said the battery is low. And I'm like, what are they talking about?
So close.
It's like my guide's telling me to go to school, right?
Right?
Go to the school of
Go to the
metaphysics.
School of Metaphysics. And I can't leave because of that. Like if I would have came on my own, I'd be able to leave. But it's like I have to finish out my mission. I don't know what it is, but
so cool.
It'll be complete at some point. Well, all right. I guess we can go. I'll check this video out and see if I can edit it.
Yeah. Peace out.
All right.